I have great respect for Deputy Matty McGrath, but I wouldn't agree with them that this is toothless, fruitless and useless. In fact, I welcome the bill, and I welcome the amount of work put in by the Department and the Minister in relation to this bill. And I often criticise speeches and written speeches. I don't on this occasion. It's succinct and to the point. It doesn't deal, of course, with the Attorney General or the thorny question of the concerns raised in relation to that. But in the manner that it deals with what it deals with, it does so. And it talks about fundamental reform, and I acknowledge that. This is fundamental reform, and I acknowledge that openly. However, what's missing from that speech is the context, as if this bill has arrived from nowhere. And the background to this is a long time brewing, let's put it like that. And I've read all the submissions, and I acknowledge the work of the committee once again. And they, in fairness, highlighted the different opinions on the committee. They didn't come down on one side or another, but they certainly highlighted different issues, as ranking being one of them, concerns over the role of the Attorney General and being placed on the committee, and so on. So why do we need this? It's not a reflection on the judges, let me add, and I must put up my hand and say, in a different life I was there, but I'm highly critical when necessary of any institution, including the judges. But the older I get and the more time I spend with institutions, I realise that on occasions, that they're the last bastion for people, of the people that manage to get there. Unfortunately, there isn't access for everyone. And I wish that's what we were discussing here, equality before the law in terms of access and the amount of judges we need, rather than this. But this is the first step, I would say, in looking at that. And so we have the academics, at least 4 of them, 3 in Ireland and 1 from outside, all acknowledging that we need a fair, transparent and rigorous process, and they say that this bill goes a long way to doing that. We have the Irish Council for Civil Liberties, which we often quote here, telling us that an independent, fair, transparent and effective judicial appointment system is crucial for protecting the independence of the judiciary and the right to a fair trial. We have the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission telling us that an independent and diverse judiciary are fundamental components for a functioning democracy. And they point out that judicial independence is a cornerstone of the rule of law and access to justice. And again, that's something we don't talk about in here, access to justice. The independence of the judiciary is an essential element for an individual's perception of the judiciary and confidence in the judicial system. And perception is very, very important here. Perception about the independence of a judiciary can affect an individual's decision to bring cases to court, to refrain from legal action, or, if available, to use other methods of dispute resolution. Interference with judicial independence and attempts at influencing judges can severely undermine the protection and recognition of human rights. And furthermore, from a rule of law perspective, a judiciary should be representative of the diversity nature of society as a whole. I could go on, but these fundamental principles have been pointed out for quite some time. And so we're here today with a piece of a bill that certainly is reforming. And there are many, many positive things in it. And I don't agree that Senator Ross's bill was the right way to go about it. And I think it was most unfortunate that it served to deflect from the real necessity for a debate in relation to justice, access to justice, diversity of the judiciary, and many, many other issues. And if this is the start of that debate, I welcome that. The positives, of course, are, for the first time, judges will be appointed based on merit, and that's set out in legislation. There will be published criteria and selection statements and diversity statements. An interview will be absolutely essential, and the numbers have been reduced to 3, from which the government must select. I think that's welcome. I think all of the organisations that I've mentioned, as well as international organisations like the Greco organisation, have said that a big number of judges a big number of names going forward to any government is unacceptable. So I think the reduction down to 3 is acceptable. I have an open mind in relation to ranking. I know a lot of issues have been raised in relation to that. I feel that concern has been met to some extent by reducing the number down to 3 and still leaves discretion to the government. And they have that under the Constitution. So I think there's a good balance there. I welcome that there's an underlining of the importance of education and training. I think it's absolutely fundamental. I welcome that there'll be a diversity strategy published and the particulars set out, and I might come back to that. I welcome that it's the same system for all applicants, regardless of their position. The existing system where there's a difference is unacceptable. The proposal that we would have a trinity in the last piece of legislation put forward, a trinity with the Attorney General being one of the trinity to appoint the top judges, was simply unacceptable. So I welcome what's happened here, that all applicants will be treated the same and have to go through the same process. I welcome the fact that eligibility has been extended to include the President of the High Court and league and academics. Although I know there has been some concerns from the the Bar Council in relation to the experience. I don't share that concern, and I think it's a welcome change that we're going to allow in legal academics. I welcome accountability and that a report will be produced annually and will be presented to the Dáil. I welcome the built-in review in the legislation, which goes somewhere to bring in accountability, although I have concerns that it's not set out, and maybe I have misread it in relation to the review not being publicised. Maybe the Minister can clarify this. The review conducted by the Commission in due course, it goes back to the Minister, but I don't see any provision for it going to the Dáil. And I think it's essential, if we're seriously interested in increasing the diversity of the judges on every level, that we see what's been said by the Commission, we see what we're learning, and we see what further necessary changes are needed in the Dáil. I welcome all of those changes, and I just go on to some of my concerns. I see no reason for having the Attorney General on this selection, on the Judicial Council, the JSE. So we have a Judicial Appointments Commission replacing the JAB, and it's a change of letters, but theoretically it's a lot more than that, depending on how it's implemented. If it's implemented properly, if the review is carried out properly, it will ensure fundamental reform. So we have the Attorney General. Now, I think practically every single submission said they had serious concerns about that, with the exception of the Bar Council. And their concern in relation to it was simply that there was no provision when the Attorney General steps out, if he or she is going for promotion, that they'd have no part in the process. Well, that's the most basic requirement, that they would step out. But in relation to the judges on the Commission, if they're going further up, they step out and there's provision for their replacement. So then we have an Attorney General who's on it, but he steps out, or she does, but there's no replacement. That's one practical problem that the Bar Council. But I think there's a far more fundamental problem, which is totally at odds with the fundamental reform that I'm praising in this bill and which the government is praising. There's no fundamental reform if we have the Attorney General on it, albeit in a non-voting capacity, because he or she will be there every step of the way, as has been pointed out, and will be there at the end when the government decides. As pointed out by the submissions, will inevitably be involved in the final selection once names are sent to the Minister. And so having them sit on the Appointments Commission, albeit without a vote, seems to give an overly dominant, I would say, influential role. The Irish Council for Civil Liberties have pointed this out. The legal academics who made submissions have pointed this out. The Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission have pointed out. And specifically, that Commission says the rationale for the presence of the Attorney General on the Judicial Appointments Commission is unclear. And significantly, there's a gap in the speech where there's no reference to it at all, except one line saying it'll be a non-voting role, but doesn't deal with The issue raised after the process of consultation has been completed and when the vast majority of submissions have raised the most serious concerns in relation to having the Attorney General on the Judicial Appointments Commission. So, Minister, I would love if you dealt with that and why we're avoiding dealing with it and given us a rationale. It doesn't make sense. I think the rationale that was given by a colleague, it's gone out of my head, but I might come back to it in a minute. It certainly didn't ring. Sorry, it was Deputy Lawless, I think. I better not until I just check, but it certainly didn't ring with me as a rationale for having the Attorney General on. The Attorney General, of course, is the government's legal advisor, and arguably this provides a means of executive involvement in the Judicial Appointments Commission's proceedings. This is not me talking, but I fully endorse this. This is from the submissions. This is particularly so given that the Attorney General also sits at the Cabinet, again in a non-decision voting role. So the risk is that having the Attorney General on the Judicial Appointments Commission, there's the obvious risk of double counting the view from the executive. So independence from the executive and the legislator was precisely, and this is pointed out, the issue in a particular case, and so on. It's gone into in detail as they see it, and I share all of those components. The Law Society said it's not appropriate to have the Attorney General on the Commission, and they outlined 6 different persuasive reasons for why the Attorney General should not be on it. There's also a suggestion that the Attorney General should be ineligible for appointment as a judge of the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal for at least a period of 12 months after leaving office. That's another concern that hasn't been dealt with at all. And as I've mentioned already, the Bar Council said that there's no provision for a replacement. And obviously there can't be because there's only one Attorney General. And so that in itself is a problem. Now, the Bar Council raised an interesting point as well in relation to the cost analysis. And there's a danger that a new Quango, I fully agree that has to be a Judicial Appointments Commission. I fully agree it has to be staffed. But I'm not sure, and I think they raise a serious, serious issues, the Bar Council, in relation to the creation of a new state body and whether it's proportion to the function for which it's created. Because in any given year, there mightn't be any judges appointed at all, and we're given an office, funding, and a director. So the basis for the potential extra expenditure has not been identified in the bill. Perhaps it has somewhere, and I'm not aware of it. And then there are concerns about confidentiality, which is another concern of mine, where the offence has been put into the bill. Only one submission raised this, and it was the academic, I think he's based in Oxford, and he raised the question of the necessity for creating an offence for canvassing or for disclosure of confidential information. Now, I understand in the previous legislation there was simply a prohibition on disclosure. Now we've gone further and created an offence. It may well be that there's a need for that, but I see no evidence. Has somebody broken that before? Have they contravened the prohibition? Why do we need that? And then how is that dealt with in relation to the Attorney General? He or she sits on the Judicial Appointments Commission and then goes back to Cabinet and talks to the ministers and so on. Where does confidentiality come into that? Or will that person, he or she as Attorney General, be treated differently in relation to confidentiality? I'd love if that was clarified for me. And if we're going this far, and I think it's a major step in fundamental reform, why shoot ourselves in the foot by keeping an Attorney General on a commission when there's no rationale for it, in my opinion? I mentioned already ranking was a serious concern of the lot of submissions. It's not a concern for me now that the numbers have been reduced down to 3. The other matter was in relation to judges being elected by their peers. It's not clear to me, Minister, if that's the case or whether they'll be nominated. And that would seem to be an international practice, that they would be by their peers. In relation to diversity and gender equality, it took 101 years to get the first 2 females appointed to the bar. So we deal here with 100-year periods, Cancorla. 2021 marked the centenary of the call to the bar of the first two women, Frances Kyle Biel and Avril Deverell Biel, in November 2021. And then they were the first two to be called to the Northern Bar. So that was the 100th year. It took another year to break the barrier for solicitors. And they were appointed in 1923. Mary Doherty Hearn was the first woman to be appointed. I think that great strides have been made. I think 40% of barristers are now female, although there's a complete imbalance in relation to senior counsels, that where only 17% are female. And yet the promotion of judges are from the pool of senior counsels. And I want to acknowledge Deputy Karen McNeil's work in this area and the book she's written and the research she has done. So it's taken quite a long time to get this far, where 40% are female. The diversity strategy, the gender strategy, plus, I'll come back to the Irish language, need to mean something in reality. So the review that's carried out and the first review will be absolutely essential to learning and to see, are we actually meaning what we're saying when we pass this legislation? Will it be implemented? The other thing that I looked at when I looked at this was, very often you can have strong legislation and strong strategies, as they have in England, and it doesn't make a difference. And we're actually ahead of them in terms of gender equality, as I understand it. So having it is one thing, implementing it is another. In relation to diversity in terms of socio-economic backgrounds, ethnic background and so on, we have no data. There is simply, it's another fact that jumps off the pages. We have no data. And we know anecdotally that the judges don't reflect society, that they come from a particular background, they come from a particular education system, absolutely no reflection on them. And in my opinion, they do a good job, relatively speaking. And again, as I started out by saying, compared to other institutions. So we need data urgently. So I think one of the first jobs for the Commission is to have data, to commission research, to carry out research. Their strategy should be based on that. It should have targets and objectives. It should be reviewed and it should be brought into the Dáil or the relevant committee so that we can look at it. Finally, why do we need this bill besides any of the political debates that have got on about it? Given the recent developments in Poland and Hungary, and again this has been identified in the submissions, it has become all the more clear that we cannot rely on convention or tradition alone and assume the goodwill on the part of any future government. So we need an independent process in as much as we can do that under the Constitution. And I think this strikes the balance in relation to that. I'll finish by saying, I would love a discussion in here when we have this done and this is set up on the monitoring of it, on the targets that are set, and on access to justice. The President of the High Court, Mary Irvine, has pointed out repeatedly that there's an absence of judges, and the 5 recent appointments over the last year were already counted for. So we need more judges. In relation to the argument that the judges are a cabal, let me just point out that back in the 30th of January 2014, the Judicial Appointments Review Committee, 8 years ago, set out 16 recommendations in a report, and they're absolutely fundamental. The present system of judicial appointments is unsatisfactory. That's the senior judges speaking. As a matter of principle, political allegiance should have no bearing on appointments to judicial office. And they go on. And that there should be no distinction between the appointments of judges on a higher level and a lower level. And they asked for ranking in their recommendations, 16 of them. So there was the senior members of the judiciary crying out for change. And I agree with Jennifer Carroll McNeil on a lot of what she said, but not on this. The judiciary themselves highlighted that reform was necessary, that it shouldn't depend on political patronage. The final thing that's not addressed is If the Judicial Appointments Commission fails to nominate somebody, what happens then if they go forward and said, we didn't pick anyone on this occasion, we're not in a position to recommend anyone? What happens then? I do welcome the fact that the government has to pick from the three, but what happens if there aren't any three?